The story opens at dawn, when the sky is still a blend of indigo and pale gold, and the western town of Willow Creek is barely stirring. The dirt streets are empty, lanterns still burn low on porches, and the first train of the morning screeches into the station, its whistle echoing across the quiet plains. Rancher Elias Turner, known for his solemn face and gentle nature, stands near the platform with a letter in his hand. A letter announcing the arrival of his mail-order bride. Elias is a man who doesn't rush into anything. After losing his parents early and inheriting the ranch at 18, life taught him to move carefully, thoughtfully, and without unnecessary noise. He had finally decided to take a wife not out of desperation, but because he was lonely. His ranch was large, the nights were cold, and the silence had become something heavy. He hoped marriage might bring warmth into his home again. But nothing prepared him for what he found when the train came to a stop. When the doors open and passengers begin stepping onto the platform, one woman does not step down with the others. Instead, the conductor calls out, "Sir, I believe this one is yours." He gestures to a bench inside the train car. There, sitting rigidly with her hands clenched around a small satchel, is a young woman with a pale, frightened face. Her hair is neat but trembling, and her dress is torn in places that suggest hurried packing and rough handling. Her name, according to the letter, is Clara Whitmore, the woman he was supposed to marry. But the letter did not mention the bruises. A faded purple mark stains her cheek, but another disappears beneath her collar. Her lower lip is slightly split, and her expression, wide-eyed, guarded, is the expression of someone who no longer expects kindness. Elias does not approach her immediately. He stands still, his breath caught in his chest, and studies her face with a mixture of shock, anger, and careful restraint. He has seen bruises before, on horses, on ranch hands after bar fights, but not like this. These bruises carry fear behind them. They belong to someone who has been controlled, threatened, hurt repeatedly. The conductor hands Elias a folded piece of paper. "She wouldn't let go of this," he says softly. Elias opens it. The note reads, "Please, whoever receives her, be kind. She had nowhere else to go. End." There's no signature, no explanation, just those words, desperate and pleading. Elias looks back at Clara, and for the first time, she lifts her gaze to meet his. Her eyes are startlingly clear, despite her injuries, blue, hollow, but still searching for safety, searching for someone who won't raise a hand to her. He moves toward her slowly, like a man approaching a spooked animal. "Miss Clara?" he says gently. She stiffens. Her fingers tighten around her satchel until her knuckles turn white. She gives a small nod, as if bracing herself for whatever he might say next. "I'm Elias Turner," he says, removing his hat with respect. "You're here to come home with me, correct?" Another nod, but she doesn't stand. She is waiting for permission or an order, or perhaps an insult. Something tells Elias she has been trained not to move unless told. So he extends his hand, not to pull her, not to command her, but simply to offer help. Her eyes flick to his hand, then back to his face, uncertainty flickering through them. She reaches out cautiously, as though expecting him to yank her violently. But when her fingers touch his, all he does is help her rise to her feet. "You're safe now," he tells her quietly, unable to stop himself. And then he says the words that will anchor the entire story. "You're not alone now." Clara's breath catches, but she doesn't respond. She isn't ready to believe him yet. Trust, for someone in her condition, is something that must be earned slowly, gently, without pressure. Elias notices how she stands with her shoulders curved inward, as though protecting herself. He notices how she flinches when a luggage cart clatters nearby. He notices how her eyes dart around the station, checking corners, scanning shadows, as if expecting someone to follow her or drag her back. "What happened to you?" he wants to ask, but he doesn't. A man with sense knows there are questions that must wait until a woman feels safe enough to answer. He takes her small suitcase, far too light, suggesting she owns almost nothing, and leads her toward his wagon. Clara follows a step behind, not beside him, not yet. But this distance, too, is something he plans on healing. When they reach the wagon, she hesitates before climbing up. It takes her a moment to gather enough courage to sit beside him. Elias makes sure to leave space between them, not because he is afraid of her, but because he wants her to breathe freely. As they begin the long ride to his ranch, the town wakes around them. Shopkeepers opening their doors, women hanging laundry, cowhands leading horses through dusty streets. No one pays special attention to the rancher and his new mail-order bride. But Clara still keeps her head lowered. Elias glances at her gently. "If you need to rest," he says, "you can. We've got a long ride, and I'll look after everything." Clara whispers her first words, "Thank you." Her voice is hoarse, barely audible, the voice of someone unused to speaking freely. Elias gives her a small, reassuring nod. In that moment, he silently vows something. Whatever had happened to her before, whatever she feared, whatever pain she carried, none of it would follow her onto his land. Not if he had anything to say about it. He doesn't know her story yet. He doesn't know who hurt her, why she fled, or what nightmares she carries. But he knows this much. She is his responsibility now, not as property, not as obligation, but as a human being who has been wounded deeply. And he intends to be the first person in her life who treats her with real tenderness. This is where the story truly begins. The wagon ride to Elias Turner's ranch stretches across miles of dusty road, wide fields, and the warm smell of sagebrush. Clara sits rigidly beside him the whole time, not speaking, barely breathing, every muscle tight like a pulled wire. Elias notices every tremor, every moment her gaze darts nervously toward the horizon. He doesn't comment. He simply guides the horses with steady hands and keeps a respectful distance. When the ranch finally comes into view, a sturdy wooden house, a large red barn, and open fields dotted with cattle, Clara instinctively tenses, as though entering any man's territory might bring punishment. But Elias speaks softly. "That there is home. No one will trouble you here." Clara nods, but cannot hide her disbelief. She has heard promises before, promises twisted later into fists and threats. She has survived by assuming kindness is temporary. She has survived by expecting disappointment. When they arrive, Elias helps her down from the wagon, careful not to touch her more than necessary. He leads her toward the house, but before going inside, he stops on the porch. "I want to be clear," he says gently, removing his hat. "You're not here to serve me. You're not here to owe me. You're here because you needed a place to be safe, and I needed someone to share this home with. That's enough." Clara lowers her eyes, overwhelmed by words that sound too generous to be real. Elias opens the door, and allows her to step inside first. The house smells of pine wood, leather, and coffee. Nothing like the cold, damp rooms she's known before. A warm fire glows in the hearth. There are no shouting voices, no footsteps pounding angrily. No atmosphere that suggests violence is waiting just beyond the next breath. For the first time since the train ride, Clara's shoulders drop slightly. Elias shows her the kitchen, the pantry, and the sitting room. He speaks slowly, gently, as if giving her space to absorb each detail. When they reach the hallway, he pauses at a closed door. "This is your room," he says. Clara blinks, startled. "My room?" "Yes. Until you're comfortable sharing more space. Or if you never are, that's your right too." Her lips tremble, not from fear this time, but from unfamiliar relief. A room of her own, a place where no one can barge in, shout at her, or worse. She steps inside carefully. The room is small, but warm. Clean sheets, a quilt, a wooden chest, and a window overlooking the fields. On the bedside table is a small lantern and a vase with fresh wildflowers Elias had placed earlier that morning. He hadn't known why, only that something inside him said the house needed a gentle touch. Clara touches the petals with shaking fingers. No one has given her flowers before. Not for kindness. She whispers, "Thank you," but Elias is already turning to leave, giving her privacy. "You can rest. I'll be outside handling chores. If you need anything at all, just call out." Then he leaves her alone. Not lonely, just alone, safely. Clara sits on the edge of the bed and lets out a breath she's been holding for months, maybe years. She looks around the room again, gradually noticing the way the sunlight spills through the window, how the wooden floor is clean, how silence here doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like possibility. The first meal. Later, Clara steps cautiously into the kitchen. She finds Elias preparing lunch, frying potatoes and slicing bread. She freezes in the doorway, uncertain. Did you want me to cook?" she asks in a tiny voice. Elias shakes his head. "You just arrived. Let me take care of things for now. There's no rush for anything." She folds her hands tightly. She is not used to people doing things for her. She spent years doing everything in fear of punishment. Meals, cleaning, tending to wounds she wasn't allowed to show. "You can sit," Elias adds. She hesitates, then slowly sits at the table. As she watches him move around the kitchen, she studies him the way animals study open hands, hoping for gentleness, bracing for the moment it changes. But it doesn't. When he sets her plate in front of her, she whispers, "I can work. I can earn my keep." Elias sits across from her and meets her gaze steadily. "You don't have to earn what you already deserve." The words hit her harder than any blow she's received. Her eyes burn, but she looks down quickly, ashamed to let him see the tears. Phrase, silence without fear. The first days on the ranch are slow and quiet. Clara keeps mostly to herself, drifting through the house like a ghost relearning how to move. She flinches at loud noises, freezes when someone knocks, and startles whenever Elias enters a room. But each time, he stops, lowers his voice, and gives her space. One afternoon, while Elias repairs a fence outside, Clara stands at the window watching him. There is no tension in his movements, no bitterness in his posture. He works steadily, like a man who doesn't believe in raising his voice or hand unless necessary. Clara steps outside timidly. I can help, she says. You don't have to, Elias replies, but she insists. Not because she owes him, but because she wants to feel useful, to reclaim her sense of self. He hands her a bucket of nails, watching her carefully to make sure she isn't pushed beyond comfort. As they work side by side, he speaks about small things, the cattle, the weather, the stubborn mule who refuses to cooperate with anyone but him. He doesn't ask about her past. He doesn't press her to talk. He simply exists beside her, calm and steady. And that teaches Clara something new. There are kinds of men who don't demand pieces of you. There are places where silence doesn't mean danger. There are homes where footsteps don't signal fear. A small, important moment. That night, as the sun dips behind the hills, Clara brings Elias a cup of coffee. Her hands shake slightly, but she holds the cup firmly. For you, she says softly. Elias accepts it with a grateful nod. Thank you, Clara. She sits across from him, hesitant but brave. For the first time since she arrived, she meets his eyes without flinching. I don't know how to be here yet, she whispers, but I'm trying. And Elias gives her the simplest, kindest smile, the kind that doesn't sting. That's all I ever ask. During Clara's first few days on the ranch, she begins to settle into a rhythm. Quiet meals, small chores she chooses for herself, slow walks through the fields at dusk. Elias gives her space, never crowding her, never speaking harshly, always steady as the land beneath their feet. But safety is not something the mind adjusts too quickly when it has known danger for too long. And on the fourth night, the past finds her again. The first nightmare. Elias wakes long before dawn to the sound of a muffled, broken cry. At first, he thinks it might be an animal outside, but as he listens, the sound sharpens. Fear, not pain. Human fear. He grabs his lantern and steps into the hallway. The sound is coming from Clara's room. He pauses at her door. He will not burst in. He knows better. So he knocks lightly. Clara, are you all right? No answer. Only a choked sob. His heart twists. Not because she needs him, but because he knows she is fighting something she cannot escape alone. Slowly, he opens the door. Clara is tangled in her sheets, drenched in sweat, her face twisted with terror. Her hands grip the blanket as if trying to protect herself from invisible blows. She gasps for breath, her head jerking side to side. No, please, don't, she whispers, trapped in whatever memory claws at her. Elias sets the lantern down gently. Clara, he says softly, you're safe. It's just a dream. When she doesn't wake, he moves closer, not touching her, but lowering his voice even more. It's me, Elias. You're on the ranch. Nobody can hurt you. This time, her eyes snap open. She looks around wildly, disoriented, then pulls her knees to her chest. She wraps her arms around herself and rocks slightly, struggling to breathe. Elias takes one careful step back so she doesn't feel trapped. You're safe, he repeats gently. For a long moment, Clara doesn't speak. Her chest rises and falls rapidly, her eyes wet and frightened. Finally, she whispers, I'm sorry. You don't ever have to apologize for a nightmare, Elias replies. But Clara shakes her head, trembling. I didn't mean to disturb you. I should have been quiet. Those words, simple, fragile, haunt Elias more than the nightmare itself, because they reveal the truth. Someone taught Clara that pain must be quiet. Someone taught her that her suffering was an inconvenience. Elias kneels beside the bed, still keeping respectful distance. "Clara," he says softly, "you never have to hide what hurts you here. Not from me." Paige. She wipes her tears quickly, embarrassed, but she doesn't pull away. For the first time, she believes him. Not fully, but enough. H3. The flashbacks. Over the next few days, the nightmares continue. They come in waves, sometimes silent, sometimes loud enough to bring Elias to her door again. Each time, he calls her name gently until she wakes. He never touches her without permission. He never rushes her. In the sixth night, after a particularly violent nightmare, Clara finally speaks the words she has been afraid to voice. "It was my fiancé," she whispers. Elias stiffens. He hadn't known she had one. The mail-order bride agency had not mentioned any broken engagements, any danger. Clara continues, in a trembling voice. "He wasn't always cruel, not at first. He was charming, patient. And then, things changed." She swallows hard, her hands twisting her nightgown fabric. "When I tried to call off the wedding, he hit me. And then he locked me in his home for days. He said if I left him, he would find me, that I belonged to him." Elias's jaw tightens, but he keeps his expression gentle. Anger has no place here, not toward her, but inside, a storm brews. Anyone who hurts Clara is an enemy he would face without hesitation. "And then he told me no one would believe me," she whispers. "That I was weak, worthless. That no one would want a woman who was difficult." Her voice cracks. "So when I escaped, I answered the mail-order advertisement. I didn't know where else to go." Elias nods slowly, letting her speak at her own pace. "And the bruises?" he asks softly, though he already knows the answer. She lifts a trembling hand to her cheek, then her collarbone, where another dark mark still lingers. "He wanted to make sure no one else would look at me," she says. "He said he would ruin me, so no man would take me in." Elias cannot stop the flare of anger in his chest. Not at Clara, but at the man who dared to lay a hand on her. He breathes deeply, steadying himself. "Clara," he says with quiet conviction, "no man owns you. Not him, not anyone." Her eyes fill again, but this time the tears fall freely. "I keep thinking he'll find me," she whispers, "that he'll show up one day." Elias shifts just slightly closer, not touching her, but close enough that she can feel the warmth of his presence. "If he ever comes here," he says firmly, "he will meet me first. And he will not lay another finger on you." Clara stares at him, stunned, because no one has ever defended her before. No one has ever spoken of her safety as something worth protecting. She manages to whisper, "Why are you being so kind to me?" Elias answers simply, "Because someone should have been long before now." The quiet change. In the days following this confession, something shifts in Clara. She doesn't heal overnight. Trauma never disappears so quickly, but she begins to trust Elias in small, important ways. She meets his gaze more often. She speaks during meals instead of staying silent. She walks beside him instead of behind him. She sleeps with her door slightly open, a sign that fear no longer controls her completely. Elias sees every change, treats everyone like something fragile and precious. He never pushes her to tell more. He never asks for details she can't give. But Clara begins to tell him anyway. in small whispers, in broken sentences, in moments where the night feels heavy but safe. And Elias listens, truly listens, without judgment, without interruption, without recoiling from her scars. Because to him, her past does not diminish her, it makes her strength more visible. A moment of trust, /up. One evening, as the sun paints the sky red and gold. Clara approaches Elias on the porch. She stands beside him silently for a moment before speaking. "I don't feel afraid when you're here." Elias turns to look at her, but she keeps her gaze on the horizon, blushing slightly. "That means more than you know," he answers softly. Clara nods once, her hands clasped in front of her. And in the fading light, without thinking, she steps just a little closer, close enough that their arms almost touch, close enough that Elias feels her trust like a quiet miracle. The past has not disappeared, but now it has a challenger. Safety, gentleness, a man who sees her as human, not property. And that is where the healing truly begins. The next weeks on Elias Turner's ranch become a quiet lesson in rebuilding a life. Healing does not happen in a straight line, and Clara's journey is no exception. Some days she moves forward boldly. Other days she crumbles under the weight of memories. But the difference now is simple and profound. She has someone on her side. Not a man demanding obedience, not someone waiting for her to fail, but a man steady enough to lend his strength without ever taking hers. Elias becomes a symbol of safety long before Clara realizes it. Small routines, big changes. Clara begins by creating routines, tiny anchors in a world that once felt unpredictable and violent. She wakes early and opens the windows to let sunlight in. She cooks breakfast some mornings, making simple dishes she learned in childhood. She helps sweep the porch, water the herb garden, or fold laundry. She takes walks around the ranch, letting the wind brush against her face. These tasks are simple, almost insignificant to an ordinary eye. But for Clara, each one is a reclaiming of control. Control of her hands, her time, her choices, her space. Elias notices without comment. He doesn't praise her overly, nor does he interfere. He lets her grow in her own rhythm, offering quiet presence rather than direction. One morning, Clara timidly asks, "May I feed the chickens?" Elias's smile is soft but real. They'd be glad for the company. For the first time, Clara smiles too. A small, hesitant curve of her lips, but genuine. The first laugh. A few days later, something unexpected happens. Elias is repairing the barn roof when his hammer slips and lands squarely in a bucket of water. The splash hits him full in the face. He freezes, dripping and stunned. Clara, standing by the barn doors with a basket of eggs, covers her mouth, not in fear, but in surprise. Then it happens, a laugh, a real one, light, clear, unforced, the kind of laugh she didn't know still existed inside her. Elias wipes water from his eyes and grins. "Well," he says, "glad to know I can entertain." Clara blushes deeply. I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Don't apologize," Elias interrupts gently. "I've been waiting to hear you laugh." Her blush deepens, but she doesn't look away. The moment hangs between them. Warm, new, delicate. Something shifts. Not romance yet. Not a declaration. Just trust beginning to bloom. The farmer's market trip. A week later, Elias suggests traveling to town for the Saturday market. "We could use flour, spices, maybe a few things for the house," he says. but only if you feel up to it. Clara hesitates. Crowds make her anxious. Towns make her feel watched, judged, too exposed. The last time she walked through a town with a man, he held her wrist so tightly she still carries faint scars. But she looks at Elias, solid, patient, trustworthy, and nods. "All right," she whispers. The wagon ride is peaceful. The market, however, is lively and loud. For a moment, Clara freezes, overwhelmed by voices, footsteps, and strangers. But Elias stands close enough for comfort, far enough not to trap her. "You're all right," he murmurs. Clara takes a steadying breath and steps forward. People glance at her, then at Elias. She expects whispers or judgment. Instead, a few townsfolk greet Elias warmly, barely paying attention to her beyond polite nods. She realizes with slow disbelief, no one is staring at her bruises. No one is talking about her past. No one sees her as broken. Later, an older woman selling fabric smiles kindly at Clara. "You've got gentle eyes," she says, handing her a strip of ribbon. "This is for you, dear." Clara nearly cries at the simple kindness. On the ride home, she holds the ribbon tightly. "No one has given me a gift in years," she whispers. Elias glances at her with softness. "They should have. You deserved better." Clara looks out at the open plains, letting the wind dry the tears she refuses to shed. HR 3, less fear, more future. As weeks pass, Clara begins to sleep more soundly. The nightmares don't disappear, but they soften, and she isn't ashamed to call Elias when she wakes from one. He always comes to her door and speaks calmly until she can breathe again. One early morning, after a difficult night, Clara knocks on Elias's door for the first time. He opens it instantly, concerned. "Are you hurt?" She shakes her head. "No, I just didn't want to be alone." Elias steps aside, letting her sit on a chair near the fireplace while he brews warm tea. He talks about the ranch schedule, the weather, the stubborn mule, normal things, grounding things. Clara listens, slowly relaxing. She realizes something quietly powerful. Elias is not good to her because he wants something from her. He is good because it is simply who he is. A turning point, trust given freely. One evening, while they are closing the shutters for a coming storm, Clara's hand brushes Elias's accidentally. She doesn't flinch, not even a little. Elias feels the significance of that tiny moment, like a crack of sunlight after rain. But he does not push it, does not reach for her, does not make it bigger than she is ready for. He simply nods, honoring the step she has taken. Later that night, as thunder rolls across the sky, Clara sits on the porch beside him, closer than usual. She wraps a shawl around her shoulders and says softly, "I'm not scared of thunder anymore." Elias nods. "Good." "Or of being here," she adds, even quieter. He turns to her, slowly, giving her time, and meets her eyes. "You're safe here, Clara, for as long as you want to be." That night, she sleeps with her door completely open. Not because she fears danger, but because she no longer fears safety. The first signs of something more. Clara starts to notice Elias in quiet ways. How he always puts her comfort first. How he listens without interrupting. How he protects her without controlling her. How he treats her not as a burden, but as someone worth caring for. And something new begins to bloom inside her. Something fragile and confusing and warm. One afternoon, while they mend a fence together, she glances at him and catches herself smiling. Elias notices, but pretends not to, respecting her emotional pace. But he feels it too, the shift, the blooming closeness. They are not lovers yet. They are not ready for declarations. But they are no longer strangers. Not broken and healer. Not wounded and savior. They are two people learning each other gently, slowly, on their own terms. Arc. Clara's healing is not complete. Her past is not gone. But for the first time in years, she is looking forward, not behind. And Elias stands beside her, steady as ever, ready to face whatever comes next. The peace on Elias Turner's ranch grows deeper with every passing day. Clara moves through the house with ease now, no longer shrinking into corners or flinching at shadows. She smiles more often, speaks freely, and walks beside Elias without hesitation. The bruises on her face fade, and the bruises on her heart begin to heal in their own slow way. But trauma has a habit of returning when least expected. And one day, the past does exactly that. Strong, the arrival of a stranger. It happens on a warm afternoon. Clara is in the garden, trimming herbs for supper, humming softly, a tune she used to sing as a girl. Elias is fixing the coral fence nearby, close enough for her to feel safe, far enough not to crowd her. Then the dust cloud appears on the horizon. A single rider, moving fast. Elias notices first. His posture straightens, his eyes sharpening. Visitors are rare out this far, and unexpected ones usually mean trouble. Clara sees the rider too, and something cold coils in her chest. A memory, a fear, a face she hopes never to see again. The horse comes to a stop near the house. The man dismounts. His boots hit the ground with a heavy, angry familiarity. Clara's breath stops. It's him. Her ex-fiancé. The man who left the bruises on her face and the fear in her bones. Her hands tremble violently. The herb basket drops to the ground. Elias steps in front of her without thinking. Not touching her, he would never do that without consent, but forming a barrier with his body, solid and silent. The man sneers. I've been looking for her. Elias doesn't move. You're not welcome here. The man laughs coldly. She's my bride. She ran from me. I've come to take back what's mine. Clara shudders, instinctively shrinking behind Elias. For a moment, she is the terrified woman she once was. But Elias's presence steadies her, like a wall holding back a storm. She belongs to no one, Elias says calmly. Least of all, you. The confrontation. The man steps forward, eyes blazing. You don't know what she's like. She's difficult, disobedient. She needs a firm hand. Elias's jaw tightens. A firm hand isn't a fist. The man's expression darkens. She lied to you. She's damaged goods. Clara flinches. But this time, Elias speaks before the words can sink in. She's not damaged, Elias says. She's hurt, and healing, and strong. And I'll be damned if you ever speak about her that way again. The man reaches for his gun. Clara gasps. Elias moves faster. He steps in front of the barrel, voice steady as thunder. If you reach for that weapon again, he says, you won't walk off my land. There's no rage in Elias's voice. No shouting. Just clarity. The kind of certainty that comes from a man who knows right from wrong deep in his bones. The man hesitates. Elias doesn't blink. Slowly, the stranger lowers his hand. You think she's worth all this? He snarls. Elias answers without a moment's pause. I know she is. Those 5 words change something inside Clara. something long buried, something fragile, but powerful. Because no one, not her parents, not her past, not any man, has ever said she was worth fighting for. Clara finds her voice. The stranger turns to Clara, fury twisting his face. You think he'll keep you safe? You think he'll love you when he finds out what you really are? Broken, useless, weak. Clara's breath comes in sharp, shaky bursts. Old fear claws at her ribs. But for the first time in her life, there is something stronger inside her. A spark ignited by kindness, by safety, by a rancher who never raised his voice, never demanded obedience, never treated her as property. Elias starts to speak for her, but Clara raises a hand. She steps forward. Her voice trembles at first, but grows steadier with each word. I'm not yours, she says. I never was. You didn't love me. You owned me. You hurt me. And I'm done being afraid of you. The man scoffs. You wouldn't last a day without someone taking pity on you. Clara straightens, drawing on every quiet moment of healing she has earned. I lasted long enough to escape you, she says. And now I have a home, a real one, with someone who treats me like a human being. She pauses. And you will not take that from me. Elias looks at her with quiet pride. Not possession, not dominance. Pride. The kind that comes from witnessing someone rise from their own ashes. The end of his claim. Elias steps forward again, his voice low and final. You're done here. Leave. Now. The man glares, rage simmering, but something in Elias's steady gaze breaks through his bravado. A bully only thrives where fear lives. Here, there is none left. The man curses, spits on the ground, and mounts his horse. He looks back once, hatred burning in his eyes, but no power behind it. Then he rides away. The dust settles, the silence returns, and Clara collapses to her knees, shaking. The moment everything changes, Elias drops beside her instantly. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't gather her into his arms. He simply waits. Clara, he says softly, tell me what you need. She lifts her trembling hand, a gesture so small, so fragile, and reaches for him. That is all the permission he needs. He kneels beside her and wraps her gently into his arms, holding her with the softness of someone who understands the weight of her fear and the strength of her courage. Clara buries her face in his shoulder and sobs. Deep, shaking sobs of relief, grief, release. Elias holds her through it all, murmuring only, "You're safe. I'm right here. He won't touch you again." And for the first time in her life, Clara believes those words. A love built on safety. When her tears finally quiet, Clara pulls back and looks into Elias's eyes. There is no pity there, no possession, only tenderness, only respect. I thought I would never get free, she whispers. Elias presses his forehead gently to hers, the softest promise. You're free. Now, he murmurs, and you're not alone anymore. Clara's heart breaks open in the most beautiful way. Elias, she says, voice trembling, I've never felt safe with anyone before. You're safe with me, he replies, for as long as you want me. Her breath catches, because she realizes what she has been building with him all along. Trust, hope, a future, a home, a partner, a life. She whispers the words that have waited in her chest for weeks. I want you too. Elias smiles, slow, gentle, and full of awe. And in that moment, Clara knows. She didn't just escape her past. She found her future.